of hesitation, I said yes. I was full of excitement and I felt so blessed that finally I will be able to show not how worthy I am, that's why I'm standing here in front of you, but how worthy God is, that He worked into my life and He made me realize how weak I was. And that's when His strength came into the picture. And how He made me realize that I have to be empty for Him to be able to fill me up. To start with, I was born in a very devoted Catholic family. I started my education in a school run by Jesuits and graduated in the same school. I went to college in a school run by nuns, the Sisters of St. Paul. Since time immemorial of my life, all I know is the Catholic Church, and the rest are just makeshifts of people that wants to protest against the church I know. My entire family are all Catholic, and there was only one person that was not a that converted into a Protestant, and things didn't go well with her. And I never thought that I will be one day in that position. Just a nutshell of how devoted I am, not because I was forced by my family, but because that was how I made up my routine as a Catholic. Growing up, grade 1 I was the first person in our class who memorized the rosary. I know it mystery by mystery. Every story of the mystery about Mary is embedded into me, and I always lead it with pride. And that was grade 1. And grade 1 is 6 years old, 7 years old. When I was in high school, I lecture in church every Sunday. I was the one who does the reading before the priest read their sermons, if some of you are familiar with it. And I usually stand beside the priest during communion, and I carry that wine that everyone sips into. And sometimes at the end of it all, I always end up to be that person to drink whatever's remaining. So I learned it the hard way for 10 years. When someone sips, I try to pour more so I don't have to drink a lot. Came college, I made that routine that every single day, I just don't go to church on Sundays. I go to church every day as much as I can. There is a mass during lunchtime. It's 11 to 12 o'clock and my class ends at 10:45. I will eat my lunch. I run into the nearest church, and I allot that whole hour just to listen to the mass, and then I run back to school to get into my 1:15 class. And every Wednesday, I go to this novena. It's a mass. It's a novena, if some of you are familiar about it. About Our Lady of Perpetual Health. It is about Mary that has ever been perpetual to us and has always been interceding for us. So our prayers will lead unto Jesus, because Jesus cannot say no to his mother. That's how we interpret it. So I go there every Wednesday, and I did not miss a thing unless I'm just away. So that's me in a nutshell, being a Catholic. And the only time I ended that routine was when I moved to Canada, which was 2012. Another big thing to me is my mother. My mother has always been next to God, is the most important person in my life. Sometimes if I'm away from her, I would, if we go to retreats and I have to do sleepovers, I call at 3 in the morning to just make sure she's alive. She will answer the phone and I'll just hang it up. I'm like, okay, my mom is alive, I can sleep now. She's very important to me, that I know every tears that comes out of her eyes, if it's a tear of pain, a tear of joy, a tear of worry. Because my dad is a seafarer and she has always been with us all throughout our growing years. Came 2012, we moved here, and I know nothing about Seventh-day Adventist. 2013, I worked in a workplace where there are a lot of Seventh-day Adventists, like Sabbath keepers, and one of them is now my husband, Young. And that's the only, that's the time I learned about it. Most of them are my friends, but what I learned about them are very, very superficial. They don't eat pork, and they don't eat seafoods, and they go to church on Saturdays. Because the first time I saw Pyong, I kept an eye on him. And I was like, which church does he go to? And I've always looked around on the cathedral where I go to, and I couldn't find him. Then I realized he actually goes to church on Saturdays.
You know?
And where am I on Saturdays? I party. I party on a Friday. I must sleep the entire Saturday. So that's when I learned about Seventh-day Adventists. It's very superficial. Fast forward, Pyong and I started dating 2017. And then 2018 when I introduced him into my parents. So I told him like, oh, this is Pyong. And he liked him. He is a man with good character. Someone that you will be very proud of to introduce to your family. And they later on realized that he is a Seventh-day Adventist. And my mom just gently asked me, he is a woman that speaks less words, but his heart speaks a lot. So she asked me like, so will you convert? And I was like, I don't know, let's see how it goes. And eventually we started dating, and I went to church with her, went to church with him just to see how it is. And my mom eventually noticed that I was going to church every Saturday because I'm all dressed up, doesn't look like a grocery outfit. And one time she asked me like, where are you going? I was like, oh, I'm going to Pyong's church and see what's in there. It was very casual, and one of those Saturdays, I already left. And when I went home, because I forgot something, so after 5 minutes I have to drive back. And when I opened the door, I saw my mom kneeling in front of the altar. And she was crying, and I saw that cry. It was a cry of pain. And she suddenly saw me coming in, and she wiped her tears and said, oh, did you leave something? Then and there I know that this will be a problem. This will be a conflict in the family. In 2019, Pyong and I moved in BC. And then we started to talk about settling down and stuff like that. So I approached my parents and said like, Pyong called my parents and asked their permission about getting married and stuff like that. And that was in May. And they said yes. May, June, July, I called my mom and told her it was just a very random conversation. And I told her that Pyong and I are getting married and we plan to do it in a Seventh-day Adventist church. And there was a deafening silence. It was a very awkward silence, and I heard her choking voice. And she said, she calls me Nene. She said, Ne, if that is the case, I will just not come. I hope you respect my decision. And I was so furious. I was like, I'm getting married. You cannot not come. You have to be there. She's like, you have to respect me as much as I will respect your hurtful decision of converting. And we never talked about it until September that Pyong and I decided to go home and personally tell them about our decision. They gave their blessings about us getting married, and my mom opened up the topic again. Where do you want to get married? And I said, it will be in a Seventh-day Adventist church. But if you want, we can do a civil wedding. I will be a pastor that will be presiding it. And she said, Airah, you have always known that a wedding is not a wedding if it is not done in a church and blessed by the priest. I stand firm that if you will not do it in a Catholic church, we will never come. it was so painful to not have my family there. I know at that point I have to choose between Pyong and my family. Not only that, just going backwards, we have to rewind a bit. In June of that year, you have seen me in the church. I have exposed myself in the church. Pyong and I have discussed about our differences in faith and how big his faith is on him as much as it is to me. But we agreed that we will have a unified faith because we have to have a strengthened faith as a family if we are to have kids, God willing, in the future. And I said, that's an easy peasy thing. Before we even get married, I will be converted. I like what I see in the church. I like the core teachings. I like everything. Why would I say no to Seventh-day Adventism? So I approached Pastor Torres to start Bible, that I am willing to start Bible study. And Pastor Torres and Ninang, which is now my Ninang Esther, was very eager and patient with me. Every time they asked me to open a Bible, it will probably take me 3 seconds, 5 seconds to look for it. I don't know my Bible, though I try to tell them that I know it. I was full of pride and I was full of myself then. Every single time Pastor Torres and Mami Torres go to my place to do Bible study, it lightens my heart because I like what I hear. But when I am alone, I have that battle in my head. Like, am I doing the right thing? So instead of me studying and strengthening my faith, I end up looking for conflicts. Instead of me looking for something that will strengthen my faith and my knowledge about Seventh-day Adventism, I ended up searching, why not Seventh-day Adventism? It was a conflict within me, and I will just have that quick fix of, whatever Pastor Torres told me, that sounds really good and heartfelt, but if I am alone, I know that I was weak. And I ended up defending my known faith, which is Catholicism. I always tell myself, what if I will make this huge decision of converting into a denomination that has just deceived me? And I was so scared that I am wrong. I always pray like, Lord, guide me. But actually, I never surrendered it. I never actually asked for Him to guide me because I still fought over something that I shouldn't. It was a battle between me and myself as well. It wasn't just because my family is Catholic, I don't want to hurt themselves, but it was a battle within myself. Like, my prayers has always been answered being a Catholic. My life has always been comfortable. We are not rich, but we have enough. No one is sick in my family. Everyone's healthy. Everyone is happy. Everyone has their prayers answered. How can I be on a wrong religion? So it has always been a battle in my head. So it was June when I approached Pastor Torres for a Bible study, and it went on until September. Every single time my now husband and I have discussions about teachings and stuff like that, we end up on an argument because that discussion always ends up with pride. I will always tell him, you know what, you trampled my faith, the faith that I know since I was a child. How dare you do that? I don't think that is the Christ I know. So we always end up in an argument. But then I know that he always makes sense and I don't. Came September, I went home, and when I came back, Pastor Torres, I know he respected it, but I stopped Bible studying. I stopped Bible studying and I said, I will study this on my own. I can do this, I'll figure it out. So I never approached Pastor Estoria since then. But I go to church. There are days that I feel lightened, but there are days that I am not. So I'm pretty much unstable. And I was very, very lost. I even asked Pyong, like, I'm very lost right now. I have problems with my family, which I can lose my family if I choose you. Or if I choose them, I will lose you. I even came to the point of being tired, and I said to myself, you know what? I'll just leave Pyong. The only thing that it will cause me is heartbreak, and that will, we all know, can get fixed. But I only have one family. But God managed to redirect me back into that trial, and He always tells me, you have to face that. That is a trouble I made for you to face, and for you to realize that you have a God. And that is a realization I had after. So I always go back to that problem. I ended up not leaving him, nor choosing my family. I ended up going back to that problem. I tried to solve them every day. I always look for solutions and solutions to make things better. But I always end up with none. I use my human strength and my human pride to always end up with a solution. But I always end up defeated. I even asked Pyong, like, I thought you're smart. Give me a solution that will fix everything. He was like, just leave it be. Everything will take time. Your mom was hurt. God will make a way. I was like, I've been praying, but there's nothing. My head is tired. My heart is tired. And here you are. You can't even give me a single solution to my problem. That was September then, and it went on and on and on. That my only break from that problem was going to work. And every single time I have to get out of my car, I just said, Lord, you are the only person that knows which church should I go to, and if I were to convert or not. I don't know how to do this. That was September, and came February. That was like a very long ordeal for me, that I end up morning and night crying. I will go to sleep worrying about it. In the morning, I worry for the same thing. We might have different circumstances, but the level of intensity of how it affected me was just too much, because it was my family and my lifelong plans. And it's also about the deepened faith that I have grown within, which is my Catholic faith, that has to be taken away from me, and I have to enter into this faith. I don't even know if it is real or not. Came February, I knew that I have reached that point that I was exhausted. I was exhausted because it has been months and months of thinking and worrying. It was one Saturday. It was one Saturday that I woke up in the morning, early morning, because I didn't get any sleep because of constant worrying. And at the back of my head, you know what? When I was a Catholic, I've never had issues like this. My life has always been comfortable. I'm happy. I enjoy life. I don't have rough edges like this. But how come I have to be in this situation? I can just pull myself out of this situation, but how come I'm still here? So I woke up 6 in the morning, and Pyong was also awake then, and because he's going for a hike, and I wanted him to stay because I wanted to talk to him, because I know I have reached that point that I was done. I was completely done. But he ended up leaving for hikes, and it was just such a dark day for me that I ended up going back to the room, turned off all the lights, and I just cried. I poured everything out, and I said, Lord, I am defeated. I surrender. I cannot do it anymore. My faith has gone low and is running empty. I don't know the answer to everything. We're just going in circles here. I don't have the strength to fight anymore. So I turned off all the lights, and I ended up falling asleep while crying. And I woke up at 9 o'clock, and it was just timely for the service. So I attended the online service, and it felt a bit better. But I know it's just a cycle that I always have. A quick fix of anything uplifting, and I still come back to that struggle that I have. So after the service, I was like, I I cannot do this anymore. Back in February, that was September. No, sorry, that was February. But back in November, my dad is just 56, and he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I was like, it's too early for you to have prostate cancer. And with all of these going on, since the time Pyong and I went home, there has always been a strain in my family. And I was like, I will be away from my family, and if I were to choose Pyong, and if I were to choose the Seventh-day Adventism, I know I will lose them. But my dad is sick. Should I choose my family versus this church that is being introduced to me? So my dad was sick then, and when I learned about the result of his biopsy, I was at work, and they sent me home because I wasn't focused at all. So I drove home, and I thought I was strong. I thought I was okay, but I ended up on a car accident going home. And that was the first ever accident I had. I know then that, when you have an accident, it will last you months. Like even changing of lanes, because that's how I had my accident. Even changing of lanes, it will give you a sudden jitter in your heart. You always have that post-traumatic stress that reminds you of the accident. So that Saturday after the service, I said, I'll drive somewhere. I'll just keep driving and driving, and let's see where it will take me. But I know I still have that stress and fear in me. So I know I'm not confident to drive that far. But I said, I'll go to Vancouver. I'll go somewhere else. I'll keep driving, and let's see where I'll end up. When I saw Pyong's message, he said that he's 30 minutes away from home. So I hurriedly changed to make sure that he will not be there when I leave, because I want to drive by myself. And I'm pretty sure it just took me 15 minutes to do all of it. And when I came out, he told me he was in Abbotsford. When I came out, he was there. He was like, oh, where are you going? He told you to wait for me. I was like, okay, let's go to Vancouver then. So God spared me that day. That night, I went to sleep. I was weary, I was empty. I feel very worthless and just tired. Like very defeated. I went to sleep, and I dreamed. I dreamed about me riding the bicycle happily. Very happy I was riding the bicycle. It was very carefree ride until I realized that instead of going forward, I was actually going sideways. And the bike doesn't work that way. I was going sideways, so I was checking my brakes. And in my dream, I was like, the brakes was okay. The wheels are not flat. How come I am skidding sideways instead of forward? And right like few meters away from me was a hut. And there was an old man. I cannot remember how he looks like. And he told me, Neng, iwan mo yung bike mo dyan kasi hindi mo alam yung nangyayari. Hindi mo alam yung problema. And then I said, there's nothing wrong with my bike. Like the brakes are okay. Ano pa nga, I even like humped the horn. My bike has a horn apparently. Sabi ko, my brakes are okay, my wheels are okay, pero how come I'm not going forward? I'm going sideways. So sabi niya, iwan mo dyan, ako bahala dyan. So I left my bike in there. I was like, I was happily riding my bike. What was wrong with it? And then suddenly everything went black. And what came out after that is a text. It says, Galatians 1:11-20. It was so vivid that I cannot forget about it until I woke up. And when I woke up, I opened my Bible. And I said, it must be a very random number. Hindi pa po ako nagtiwala. Sabi ko, it must be a random number. Parang loto lang yan and numbers will show up and eventually you will forget about it. But when I woke up, it was so vivid. Galatians 1:11-20. And when I opened my Bible, it was the start of this chapter. It was the start of this verse. And it was titled, Paul, Called by God. And it started in verse 11 and it ends in 20. I couldn't believe how God worked into my life then. I called Pastor Estores. Sabi ko, Pastor, I had this dream. What does it mean? I didn't even think about the bicycle. I just thought about the verse. Sabi ni Pastor, God was talking to you and you should not harden your heart. I still have that bit of hesitation in me, to be honest. And then I realized that bicycle, the ride that I was doing was actually my Catholic faith. I was happy, I was comfortable, but I was going sideways and not forward. And I said that I believe the Bible and that is where we base our teachings to, but I never really opened it. I remember Chapot asked me for a bedtime story at one time, and she asked me to tell her about the story of Moses. I just scratched my head. Oh no, story of Noah. I scratched my head. That's the only thing I know is Noah has the ark. Otherwise, I don't know the entire story. That was such a slap in my face. So all the while the faith that I was talking was very superficial and just man-made. It was just all centered to me as a person. So after that dream, I know that God spoke to me. Pero hindi, 99.9% pa lang po yung pag-surrender ko sa Panginoon. Because at the back of my head, how about my family? If I convert, I'll still lose them. God answered my question about should I convert or not. How about my family? They're still mad at me. It won't change. They won't know what my dream was about. But God told me, God made ways to make me realize na hindi pa siya tapos. When I surrendered, He took over. 2 days after, I know that the Holy Spirit worked into my life then. 2 days after, my mom called me. Very random. She never calls me. I always call her. She calls me. She called me, sorry. And sabi niya, Ne, if you want to get married, may it be in the church or may it be a civil wedding. Your dad and I will come. I was like, say that again, you will come? I was like, yes, we will come. You're old enough, you have your decisions, and you know what you're doing. Count on us, we will be there. That's the wedding in April, with only my parents and our family in there. This whole story made me realize that God put me in such trial and redirected me back into that trial to make me realize that I am weak. And the only strength I have is through Him.
Amen.
And we always measure ourselves based on other people. We forget that the most righteous person is God. So if we start to measure ourselves to God, we will realize how much of a sinner we are. And if we do that, we'll surrender everything. We will wait for ourselves. We allow ourselves to be empty para mapunuan tayo ng Panginoon. And then we start to surrender and let God take over. So that is my story. I am still learning everything. I cannot still pull a verse out of a Bible because hindi ko pa alam yung Bible. Pero me standing in front of you just testifies how worthy and how beautiful our God is. I was a very stubborn, prideful person, pero bakit siya sa akin lumapit? Why did He work into my life? Rather, bakit hindi siya pumunta sa mga pastors? Because they preach more. Nilapitan niya ako even though I was stubborn kasi gusto niyang makita natin na regardless of how much of a sinner you are, how much you doubt, and how stubborn you are, I can still work into your life. So here I am, and hopefully all of us will hear that call and continue to preach, not just in our circle, regardless of how small the story is. I know God will continue to recognize the worth of it if we only exalt His name and nothing else but Him in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Amen.